Hello folks, and welcome to Tippcast with myself, Shane Stapleton, joined as ever by the head of sport in the Guardian, Shane Brophy. Shane, we had to endure quite a performance over the weekend from Tipperary in defeat to Clare. Finished up 124 to 213, and one of the things that kind of sticks out like a sore thumb to me is 25 scores to 15. It just wasn't vintage Tip, was it?
Oh, it was it was a tough day. Look, I suppose it's the problem, isn't it? I think I made a point in my analysis piece this year that we were, whenever your last game is in the league, it's always the one that lingers into the championship. And like, bar you win the league, you always have questions, you always have doubts. And Jesus, like it just sort of felt like, remember I think the worst one was the 2017 league final against Galway, where it was an absolutely complete no-show and you didn't know where you stood, like, and
nearly won the All-Ireland semi-final that year.
Yeah, that's it. Like, you can't hang your hat, and like you can't hang your hat on what you're seeing at the moment, even hurling and football. Like, you just don't know from one game to the next. You don't know what training week has been going on in some counties. You can suspect that maybe Limerick and Tip did a bit extra last week, but that's not to say Kilkenny and Clare didn't do any extra, but certainly Kilkenny and Clare looked like they came to play last weekend. And while I don't think it was a physical thing with Tip on Sunday, I definitely think it was mental. They just looked completely mentally ill-prepared for a game. Like, it was like a challenge match for them. And after 12 minutes, they suddenly realised, okay, lads, there's 7,000-8,000 people here. We better get moving. But sure, then the damage was done, and the malaise had already set in, and the frees were starting to be missed, and sitting off tackles, and just, I don't know what you think. I think a lot of it last weekend was psychological. They just were not tuned in for a game last weekend.
Did you ever think of it in the terms of, right, so Clare were supposed to show up and not be interested in getting to a final.
Yeah.
They didn't want to play 2 weeks out from playing Limerick in the championship. Whereas Tipperary were supposed to show up and, it'll be great now to get the league final close to championship. Is it one of those things where maybe Clare showed up relaxed and we showed up thinking the game was won, and maybe it's a bit of complacency or something?
I don't know. I wouldn't say complacency. I just thought, sure, like, we've all been with teams, like, if you just know in the dressing room beforehand whether enough lads are up for it, and I just, maybe that was it. Maybe a lot of players just didn't treat it as, like, this game was a notch above a league match. Like, this is knockout, like, and look, if you throw in the Waterford game last year and the Galway game last year, that's 3 knockout games. That's 3 games in a row where we've had something to play for, and we haven't performed. We haven't brought the level of intensity from the very, very first minute.
And if you add in the Limerick game, which I would say is the only other league game that matters, you could make a bit of a case for the Galway one, but the 4 games that matter, like, I did up the stats, and it's 18.5 flags raised per game.
Yeah.
Do you know, the goals are nearly taking the bad look off a couple of these performances. Or are we overly dramatising this?
I suppose we can only go on what we're seeing, but I definitely think there could be something in, like, we go back to the first 2 matches against Dublin and Galway. We looked energetic, we looked powerful, we looked pacey. But the last 4 games, we haven't looked the same. And I just wonder, after the first 2 games, when we essentially had our Tier 1 fate for next year determined, did the management decide, okay, we've done enough. Okay, we won't not go for the league, but our focus is the summer. But, like, we've got our Division 1A status for next year sliced up, like, and but it's like, you think about it. Just say if Galway had beaten Limerick the week before and we hadn't a game last weekend, would we be any worse off going into the championship than having the experience against Clare? In some ways, no, but in some ways, yes, because in some ways it was great probably for Liam Cahill, because he really has a stick to go after the lads now for the next 5 weeks.
Yeah, and it's like, if we look at Limerick and think, right, well, that's not Limerick. They can obviously play an awful lot better than that in the, after their defeat to Kilkenny. Now, this Tipperary team, I mean, there are some lads who won the All-Ireland in 2019 there, so they have that confidence in the bank. Yeah. but based on the previous 4 seasons there, we can't necessarily think that, even though we know there's more in that team, that they'll necessarily turn it on overnight. But yeah, I agree with you. I think it's no harm to get that rocket up the team now, so that they know if we show up in the first round of the Munster Championship and we're not on it, we're going to get beaten badly. And I mean, we looked at the Limerick game and say, okay, late on, you scored 1-1 to pull back the scoreline to within a point. So previous Limerick games, they're pulling away from you in the last few minutes. This Tip team isn't giving up. Whereas this game, do you know, like Kevin Fenton here comes in with a good comment, and keep your comments coming in, folks. The structure of the team is worrying. Don't see a settled team or system of play. Clare looked like a real team.
That's the only worry for me, is that, like, you think look at Limerick last week. They have credit in the bank to throw in a stinker of a performance like that. We don't. They know what they're about. We don't know who our goalie is. We don't know who our 6 is. Maybe Liam Cahill and his management know exactly what they're going to do in the first round of the championship. If they are, fair enough. Or maybe they've decided we'll use all the league matches. We've given 38 players a go, and that the next 5 weeks will train, and that'll determine who plays where. Like, if you know, and then look, it's a risky strategy, but look, because, like, me and you can't confidently pick a Tipperary, the Tip's best 15 at the moment, because the management haven't put out our best 15 in the league. I think that's by design. If you're trying to bed in a goalie, you give him all the games, or you give him 4 or 5 of them. You don't mix and match. Like, that has the only downside, maybe, of, if I'm thinking the way they've taken the league as just being a way to get matches into lads' legs, that we've no defined system of play, we've no settled team. We now have doubts. Even now over free taker, because will those misses go into the back of Ford's and Connor's head when push comes to shove? There was so much off last Sunday. Okay, Ford and O'Connor started missing frees, but then you go your third free taker, and it was a long range free, Willie Connors. Your next best free taker after Gerard O'Connor is Ronan Maher, especially a long range. Why wasn't Ronan called out to take that? Like, Willie doesn't really take frees for Killadangan, so it sort of felt like, sure, Willie, you're the nearest, you take it. Like, that was my sort of a sense that we weren't fully tuned in for a lot of. We weren't fully prepared for all eventualities.
That's why, to some degree, I can't fully believe what I saw at the weekend. Yeah. And again, the same for Limerick. But I don't think we've ever had a concern over Jason Ford and free taking before. No. And like Gerard O'Connor maybe he's a little bit tired, and maybe the next 5 weeks they'll find the right balance to get him back to the way he was last year and the way he was earlier this year. But there's so much that like, there was good points throughout some of the earlier league games, like the way they were moving the ball and coming off the shoulder against Dublin, for example, in Parnell Park. I was there and I was like, okay, this is the way the team wants to move the ball. This is encouraging. Some of the moments against Galway, Galway couldn't live with it at the time. But I think
our scoring rates in the first 2 games were high. Our scoring rates since then have dropped. Like, is that other teams picking up a level, or have we decided to go into? Are we doing a lot of training now to be fresh for the summer? And look, that was the one thing thrown at Cahill, that we hit the ground running too early last year. That we kind of peaked late March. But you think about that league semi-final, we played very well that night against Limerick. Okay, lost by 6, but maybe he's looking to peak in 28th of April and keep it sustained right through the summer.
And that could totally be the case. But this is why I'm like, in the past, right? Has Liam Cahill and Michael Beaven's team been really bad in terms of puck out setup, but going in both ways? I don't think they have been overly bad. And I think of the time that Waterford nearly shocked Limerick in the Munster final. Was that 2020? The time they lost by 4 points, I think.
Yeah.
And they were brilliant in the way they set up for the puck outs that day. And they sort of suckered Limerick into traps, I should say, when they were bringing it out from the back. Now, maybe this is partly down to how many changes happened in the team. Losing Seamus Kennedy, obviously, is a disaster. Owen Connolly's not there. He's been really kind of impressing, and just a lot of changes. So I really like Conor Bowe, but he was moved to midfield, and Connors was brought back.
That made no sense. Like that was a kind of a.
But just to bring it back to a broader point, there was a lot of changes. Breen was brought out to wing back. Obviously, he can play there. Darragh Stapleton was thrown in. So all of a sudden, the team has been totally turned on its head, partly because of injury, partly giving lads a go, the whole lot. And all of a sudden, the way Clare were able to walk the puck outs out and run them out up the sideline, and Adam Hogan popped an over the bar.
That for me said everything about how the Tip were not tuned in.
But there was no cohesive moving over and back. There was no sort of knowing when to drop and when to press. And then as for the long puck outs, my God, anytime they went straight down on top of the middle in the 6 area, it was pandemonium. And Tipperary were not attacking the breaks, and maybe there wasn't the defensive nous from the midfield to get back and cover, and the half back line didn't seem to be coming back either. But like, you were looking at half backs going up, windmilling with one arm, with just swinging the hurley. And this is why, if you need someone at 6 who commands the zone, and whether that's organisation skills, whether it's been able to fetch a high ball. I thought Ronan Maher was actually really good at full back, and the only time a score came off him is when a low ball was played in front and there's a load of space, and as a full back, what can you do? You have to let him score. But you need someone at 6 now who can dominate the area, whether it's bringing in Barry Heffernan, whether it's bringing Ronan. Like, you need at 6 somebody who brings calm control and a little bit of domination under the odd high ball.
I get that. And because it's tough for Robert Byrne, because like he's trying to find his way, and he's trying to find his way in a team it's not settled, and we still don't know who's going to play either side of him. Like, you have to think Conor Bowe is going to be one of them, that maybe they decided, look, we're happy with Bowe wing back, we'll see what he can do in midfield. Which is fine. Yeah, that's fine. Yeah, Brian O'Mara. Brian O'Mara is the one that's disappointed me. I don't think he's really adding. He's not bringing aggression with enough of his quality. He's not bringing enough intensity for me, because like, he's all the ability. Like, so.
Is he a cornerback though?
No. He's not. Like, Michael Breen got a bit of a going over at the weekend. Like, so, but look, we saw how good he was against Conor O'Helan. Like, so, like I think the only 3 players that came out of the game with their reputations enhanced were Craig Morgan, Willie Connors, and Jake Morris. That was about it. Like, Dan McCormick was solid, but we always know what we're going to get with Dan. I just see Paddy or the commentator Tip. No, I don't think Tip went out not to win it. I think Tip didn't go out prepared well enough to compete in a game. Like, I just think there's a difference. Like, if you're not fully tuned in, or maybe you had a tough week's training, you're not in the best position to win a hurling match. Like, so, but that's not saying that Clare didn't do the very same either in the last week. But they looked to me like, once they stepped off the bus in Portlaoise, they were mentally tuned in for a game, and they brought the intensity. Because, in fairness, Tip did bring it at the start of the second half, and we finally looked like a hurling team, but it wasn't sustainable. It was like one of those where Cahill got the hurley and banged it off a table at half time, and we got that 10-minute reaction you always get, but it's not sustainable really. Like, and we died away after that. Like, only 2 points in the last 29 minutes of actual playing time. Like,
yeah, and like, after getting back to within 3 points to convert to 5 in the next 17. We have a couple of comments coming in here from a Clare man, Adrian McGrath. As you know, I'm only here for the misery, but it seems clear that Cahill came with a running system, and he's trying to impose it on players it doesn't suit because the runners aren't there. Cahill's team selection suggested he didn't trust his selected wingbacks to mark Duggan and Fitzgerald. That's just nuts in the league. I kind of already said it, that the team was turned around an awful lot. And it's not that hasn't been done in previous league games. No matter what 15 you put out, you would expect it to be the quality to keep you in the game. But like, the puck outs are controllable. Like, that can be fixed between. Like, it hasn't been as poor as that in other games that I can think of. That can be targeted and organised pretty quickly, I would say. And then the other thing is Tipperary's conversion rate ever going to be as bad as that ever again? Or, like Liam Cahill told you and others afterwards, it was like everyone had an off day at the one time.
Like, the Ford and O'Connor, it was like they were. The slitter was a rock or a boulder they were lifting off the ground. Like, they had no control of it. Like, it
went wide by 10 yards at times.
Yeah, like, it was mad. Like, it just and then you were thinking, the team that were coming into the match with free taking issues are Clare, and Mark Rogers, okay, 3 from 3 to start, then Aidan McCarthy, and then he goes on and nails every long range free into the breeze in the second half. Like, and we know Aidan McCarthy can hit frees, but there's every chance that Aidan McCarthy in the league final could go out and miss 3 or 4. Like, he had one of those days, like, where we know on his day he can hit them, but he's more missed than hit. Like, so, it's, look, I suppose, look, we've seen enough Tipperary league campaigns, and we've seen an awful lot of others. And Liam Cahill only has to go back 2 years when he was Waterford manager. They won the league and accounted for absolutely nothing in the championship. I just think there's so much can change. And look, I think that's the one thing we've got to hang our hat at. You look, a couple of weeks ago, Cork hurling was being written off. Now they ended the league with 3 wins from 3, and they're the greatest. They're supposed to be the greatest up and coming team. Like, we're definitely in that sort of cycle. Over in the 15, 20 years ago, and when it came to English soccer, you're always one defeat away from a crisis, and that sort of never happened in GAA. And we're sort of in that instant thing now, where if you lose a game, it's full of questions. Like Limerick last weekend. And I suppose we don't get much of an opportunity to analyse Limerick in defeat. So I think that's maybe why some pundits and people are sort of taking the opportunity. Maybe is it more of a, like, looking more deeply into maybe is it a potential problem? I don't think it is. Like, but that's not to say that's not to say John Kiley was not going to take that. I take this as an opportunity really to refocus these guys. Like.
Yeah, and like, at the end of the game, Tipperary missed 1-4 like, with the last 5 chances. So there was a chance to make it a bit closer. To be fair to Clare, they missed 6 of their last 7 shots. So they had also mentally tuned out at that stage. But just to read out some of what Liam Cahill was telling you afterwards, and this is all in the Nina Guardian, by the way. The Nina Guardian is available now if you want to go and get a copy of that, pick that up. There's plenty of analysis there.
Yeah, Luke Humphreys was in town on Sunday, so I'd say anybody who went to the darts exhibition in Silvermine had a better day than watching the hurling. So,
well, some of what Cahill said is we'll figure it out in time for the 28th of April. There's great character in that dressing room. We have a great mix of experienced fellas in their twilight years and some good, aggressive young lads who've come on in the past few years. There's a nice mix there. They're a really good, tight group, and we love working with them. We love coming to the training field with them, myself and Mikey. And we're not going to give up on them anytime soon, because this is a new crop of Tipperary hurlers coming. Not maybe for this year, but I think in the time that we're here, the Tip team will have transitioned fully. So to the Tipperary supporters, I would say stick with them. They will come right, because what I see in training is not what transpired here today. The day that they do bring their training form to the pitch, there'll be a match for anyone. Now, is he trying to give it the glass half full, sunny side up here? Did you buy into that when you were hearing that?
I kind of did, because I suppose people, you're reading out the words there, but when we're doing these interviews, we also get to see their facial expressions when they're saying it. Yeah. And Cal was some of what when he was talking about 5 minutes, there's kind of a wry smile there, as if, when you look at a guy's face, and especially I go back to Colin Bonner time, and when things were going, you could see that it was really hurting him in his heart. I never got that sense with Cahill that he was overly, he was nearly in panic mode or anything, or really perturbed by what he saw. I did get the sense that maybe I have these guys where I want them now. I really have their focus. Because, like, in some way, like, we all said Tip needed to win the league, and they were doing great, and we would have got a bit of confidence from it. God, sometimes with Tipperary, a win and run is actually dangerous, because it softens them up, whereas maybe Cahill wants to really harden them. And maybe we always know the best way to harden a team is to use maybe a defeat to refocus them. It's thinking maybe it's an Irish thing, like we seem to other teams where it's all about winning, and whereas we love to use the stick in Ireland to sort of get lads focused. And like, if you think about it, like, if you really wanted to win the game, and I know like Noel McGrath wouldn't have been played in County League last Sunday with Lockmore. I know he didn't train on Tuesday, and it seemed, but he if he wasn't in a position to fully train Tuesday and not start, like you'd surely put him on the bench if you really wanted to win or have something there. So, like, like I did get the sense that I could say McClare, the Tip didn't sell out last weekend. I don't think they sold out against Limerick either in that match. Like there's definitely a sense that whatever they did in the first two games of the league, they haven't been doing the same for the last four. They haven't had the same legs, same energy, same drive, and maybe it's all about loading up and then hit the 28th. Like you think the 28th of April, there's such a massive possibility there. Like you're either playing a Limerick team coming in off a high of beating Clare, or you've got a Limerick team coming in under pressure after losing to Clare. Okay, it could end in a draw too. Like so, and that maybe Tip are coming in fresh, and maybe you could take them out. You could get a result that day. Like so, and there's a comment there. We don't have the players. Like I'm hearing that an awful lot at the moment. I think it's a very pessimistic. It's a very defeated attitude. Like we don't compare to the great 2009 to 2019 team, definitely, but like that's a kind of a one in a generation thing where you get a group of lads that are, how would you say, they're lifetime players, barring Maher and Brendan and all them lads. We're sort of we have to make do with what we have. We've got to try and develop the next generation and get them up to a level. Like so, you look at what Clare have done. Like they're okay. You have a couple of Conlon and O'Donnell and Kelly still hanging around from the under-21 team, but a lot of the good Limerick Clare team now are guys that didn't do much underage.
Yeah, Adrian McGrath says, lads, new team coming. They're all 25. 7 of Clare's starters are younger than Grode O'Connor, 8 if you include Aidan McCarthy. It's a fair point. They do have a lot of youth on their side. And like we can talk about who we're missing, but you mentioned that there, Tony Kelly, Shane O'Donnell, David McInerney, Ryan Taylor, none of those key men playing for Clare. So after the game, was there any talk of the injury situation? We know Seamus Kennedy's gone for the year. What about Owen Connolly, Cahill Barrett? Was there any talk about any of this?
No. I suppose injuries didn't come up as we did touch on them the week before against Antrim, that Cahill is having trouble with his it's slow with his hamstring, and Owen Connolly, it's a couple of weeks with the elbow. Mark Keogh the same. So, well, like I would have thought, like it didn't sound like if they got a good run ahead, they'd be available for 28th of April. Like there's nobody else long term. I suppose we didn't check out. And there was anybody like Barry Heffernan didn't make the squad. Like
Paddy Cadell didn't make the squad either, did he? Paddy Cadell, was he in the 26? I don't think so.
But I think he was.
Was
he? Yeah, he was number 17. Yeah. So look, I suppose it wasn't all bad. I suppose like it's great to see Sean Hayes coming on and making an impact, and I suppose scoring a goal that we know he does regularly for Killadangan. And Sean Kennelly I think is really going to be a guy that Liam Cahill is going to put a lot of faith in, because we know he can score, and he's a guy that relishes the physical exchanges too. And look, I thought he was encouraging. Alan Tynan brought a bit of heft off the bench as well. Like so, look, I suppose in fairness, when we were challenged to produce a response, we did, but it just wasn't sustainable enough. And look, that could be an element too, where we just didn't have the energy to sustain it. And look, we are where we are now. Like it's what you can imagine in 2 weeks' time, if just say hypothetically Clare don't beat Kilkenny, you can imagine maybe the doubts that just can Clare go if just say. If it's a narrow defeat, like there'll be questions, even if they would be unfair, but there'll be questions over how are Clare fixed for Limerick. Can you just plug Tony Kelly back in there? You probably can trust that Shane O'Donnell will perform, because if he's done it before, you can plug him in the last couple of years, and he after no league and he hasn't missed a beat. Like so, I suppose the question will be over Kelly. I'd say Ryan Taylor will probably be the back end of Munster by all accounts. Like and David McInerney, hard to see him playing the league final from people who seeking. Maybe they'll probably spare him maybe to be ready for Limerick.
Yeah, Clare have a very impressive panel. Let's call it spade a spade. And it does feel like Tip are a little bit of a step back, but once you plug in all those players, assuming everyone comes right, and you put it like, because at times Tipperary lacked a bit of speed, power, athleticism, whatever you want to say, and playing against the wind and the lack, and getting killed momentum-wise early in the game. And to be fair, once or twice could have been given frees that would have helped halt the momentum, in front of the post. But that aside, let's not paper over the cracks. But when you put in Cathal Barrett, when you put in Owen Connolly, maybe Barry Heffernan, Mark Keogh, in terms of like athleticism, right? You can really hammer a game hard for the first 55 minutes. And I think then at that stage, can you unleash Noel McGrath? Maybe Bonner Maher might do his best stuff coming off. But, you could actually make a case that, okay, it's not looking good now, but things could change. Now, Liam Slattery says everything hinges on the Limerick game. Lose that and Tipper in serious trouble facing Waterford in a do-or-die match 6 days later. A big ask. And David Hogan throws in, Liam, or Cahill does have an eye for a future. He's kept Darren McCarthy in the squad after the recent cut without giving him a game. And Sam O'Farrell will be there permanently after he's freed up. He'll be a key man for the 20s for sure. So, I mean, are you buying in on the whole, it's not the end of the world anyway?
Actually, look, you can't. It's like, we shouldn't. If you're talking to someone, we've no idea what's this point is. Like I think the Munster Championship tickets are going on sale this morning at 10 o'clock. I think all bar the Waterford game, because that's a limited capacity. Like why would you? You're talking to someone. Why would you turn up if you feel that Tipper not going anywhere? Like I think that's just defeat. It's like I think Tipperary should always, and Liam Cahill doesn't stand back from a fight. I think you'll still have a Tipperary team well prepared going into that Limerick game, and like we've got to be. That comment there about Tip have to be like we've got to be so like you can't hang your hat on the first game. I've gone through
the wins could be enough. You just don't know.
That's it. Like it's all about amassing points. Like it's Clare have in the 2 years, in the 4 iterations of the round robin, Clare have lost their first match twice and ended up getting to a Munster final. Like you can't afford. Look, I think the only way losing the first match against Limerick would be bad is if we get an absolute trimming, and then don't like that. That is, I think you have to. I've been saying it. I'd say blue in the face here. I think Tip have to be preparing the Limerick and Waterford matches together. You nearly have to be. It's like there's only 6 days apart. There's no way you can put the same team out on Saturday or the Sunday at 4, and then go to Waterford the following 6 on Saturday at 6 o'clock. Without making at least 5 or 6 changes, because you'll need to freshen it up. There's no way you can get away from it. And I think maybe that's why. Maybe that's what Cahill was doing, giving as many players game time in the league, because he knows no matter how well or how poorly or how things go against Limerick, he just for pure freshness, he's going to have to make changes for Waterford.
So then if we're to sort of turn the focus on Limerick and their performance against Kilkenny, it was 115 to 317. They went 1-2 to zip ahead early in the game and lost the remainder of it by 13 points, which is kind of what Limerick seemed to do to other teams, certainly in the last couple of years. Could you believe in what you saw in terms of that performance from Limerick?
Not much. Well, I was listening to a lot of it on Saturday driving, but look, it was an awful lot of what you would associate with Limerick. We were not used to what we're seeing. And now we have to give Kilkenny a lot of credit for that too. I do think Kilkenny did some things in terms of how they kept their defensive shape, even when the likes of Garrod Hegger or the Limerick half forward line drifted back. The Kilkenny half forward line really put in a good defensive shift. Like they all more or less, that midfield and that 5 or 6 guys around the midfield and half forward line. If there was a Limerick guy in the area, they picked him up. It didn't matter whose number it was. They got to him. And it allowed Paddy Deegan and maybe a few of the other guys just to keep their defensive shape in place. So look, I think there was definitely an element of Kilkenny maybe working on something maybe for down the road and that. But I did think from an attacking sense that I think Kilkenny showed that I think you've got to try and create one-on-one matchups against them. I know maybe come the summer, Barry Nash, Sean Finn, Dan Morrissey, it's easier said than done to win one-on-one, but it's a lot easier one-on-one than maybe allowing a centre back to sit back and sort of create a 2-on-1 scenario. I do, like I said it a few weeks ago, I think the best way to take on Limerick is is to go man for man as best you can, especially in the forwards. Like don't give them the sweep, or don't give them a +1 that will sweep up, though, especially Tip, who like to play early quick ball in, like, and I think you take your chances, like, that just say if 10 balls go in and you only win 4, but can you harvest 2-2 or 1-3 out of those 4? That's probably not a bad return. Like, I think some ways you've got to be prepared maybe to lose the possession battle, but what possession you do get, you've got to convert it. I think Kilkenny did that the weekend.
Yeah, you need all energy against Limerick. And strangely, Limerick looked like they had just run a marathon before playing the match. Now, I don't think in the era of modern sports science that teams are going to flog their players before a match.
It's dangerous if you pull your muscle injuries, like if you flog them, like you're asking for trouble, like, so.
Yeah, now maybe they did have a decent workload heading into it. Yeah. I mean, you'd imagine they probably did, but still, like, you look at, and maybe this feeds into the point that maybe they did that, but like Declan Hannon, who's not long back from injury, he looks stuck to the ground. Keane Lynch, his first run, he overdid the ball. He was turned over in the lead up to the the TJ Reid goal. Like, key players, Barry Nash, I've never seen him play like this before. Everything he touched just did not happen. He was spun by Owen Cody for the goal. He was spun by different players. Aaron Costello probably had a nightmare. Nicky Quaid in the goal, he looked as uncertain as I've ever seen. Like, in the first half, the time that Declan Hannon spilled the ball, and then Quaid is all at sea, and in the second half he comes out to get a ball and dives on top of it, and I'm like, this is not Limerick. This is like pre-Kylie era Limerick here. And I just wonder, and I did a column about this, I wonder, like, it went from the start of the year whereby they played a Munster Hurling League game in January, then their game against Cork, which was supposed to be the next game, that was postponed 3 times, and then the competition had to be binned because of the weather. Then their first 2 league games were against Antrim and Westmeath, which were very much off Broadway. Neither of them played in Limerick. And then all of a sudden, you had the Dublin game, and Kyle Hayes is named, and then there's focus on Kyle Hayes, and it doesn't stop. And then you've got the Galway game and the Tip game, and they're on TV, and Kylie's been asked about curfews for Hayes and all these things. And then this performs. And you just wonder, is it something between the ears at the moment, not to mention the talk of 5 in a row ramped up? And then you're like, well, maybe that performance is like, all of these players have so much miles on the clock, and there's almost no change in the team since the 2018 final. There's a load of different reasons. Nobody actually knows the answer here, and maybe they'll be brilliant come Munster, but it kind of makes for a very interesting topic.
Oh, it does, yeah. Look, I suppose, that's probably what I said earlier on, that I suppose they don't show many chinks in their armor. So I suppose when they finally show one, we've got to analyze for what we saw at the weekend. I still either put it down to a bad day or put it down to that physically and mentally, emotionally, they just weren't in the right space to play that game. Maybe that was by design. Maybe, look, not for 1 second did I think Kylie think they were going to go out and lose by 8 points. Like, I thought he'd be hoping, look, whatever we do, we're still going to be competitive out there. But look, they were well off it. Like 115 is probably, I'd say, it's their lowest score for an absolute age. Like, so, like, that's a long way off the 30 points. Like, it's which is your usual target in a game, like only 18. Like, so.
And they only created 32 chances in the whole game. Like, you go back to some of the All-Irelands in recent years, and they're creating 60 chances in a game. So that'll just tell you how dead in their feet they were.
Yeah. Like, they're in Portugal at the moment, so like they were heading off for the week. They're in a lovely spot now because they can really hone in on Clare, while Clare have to focus on Kilkenny first, and I suppose all the thing around that, and the fact that, look, it would be great for Clare to win the league. But on the flip side, if Clare lose to Kilkenny again, does that sort of create a bit of a cloud then going into the Limerick game? So, like, I think, while I don't think any Clare will look forward to that league final, it's, barry you win it, it's like it's you're risking injuries, you're risking a suspension. Maybe if somebody gets a straight red, you're
like Peter Casey.
Yeah. Plus, you're. Like, if you're Clare, you're probably going to have to do a hard week's training in the week up to Kilkenny, because you're not going to be able to train much after. You've only 2 weeks. You can't really train hard. Maybe you train hard this week, but can you taper down for 3 weeks? They'll have to do something between it. Kenny, maybe they'll have one of those dog eat dog A versus B matches on the following Sunday. Like I suppose that's where a lot of teams sort of do that final sort of Sunday morning dog eat dog. They'll probably be able to do that, but they won't be able to do bar this week. Maybe they won't be able to do all that physical training now for Clare between now and the 21st.
Adrian Grass says Kyle Hayes might serve them well. If there's a focus on him, it will create the emotional siege they might need this year and also dilute the 5 in a row talk. Kinnerk will hate that emotional stuff.
No.
Must win for Clare, I think. So just back then to the league in general, you did your In All Fairness column, which again you can get in the Nina Guardian, which is on sale now. The idea of going into a league and not having a clue whether teams want to win it or not. I mean, so obviously it's just too close to the championship or the way it's structured, and obviously you have the preseason competitions. This is a massive own goal from the GAA when people are looking at the league and like nobody wants to win this thing, which means eventually nobody will want to watch this thing.
That's it. Yeah, it's look, I give the sort of the organisers a pass on this because I think it's one of the things that has come around because of the split season. I thought that I don't think maybe many in the GAA thought that maybe a short run from the end of the league to the championship would be a problem. But now it is. That it's obvious that managers want that. It looks to me that they want minimum 3 weeks between that end of the league and championship, and that by tightening up the structure, maybe when the split season came in, maybe the designers thought that okay, managers will have your pre-season between December and January, and that you could effectively play matches every week or every second week from then till May or June. But that's not the case. And we were all looking more greater ratio of matches to training, this fascination with training among managers in preparation still seems to be an issue. That they feel that if they're not in the training field, that they're suffering. Like it's a bit strange. I think you're there to play matches, like not to train.
And then when you have all the matches, like if anyone's got any sort of a niggle, and you know this being involved with teams yourself, you're almost like, geez, we better keep them out. You know, it could be a thing where that happened for Tipperary at the weekend. They're like, and especially as the game's going away from the team in the second half, they're like, well, a bit like Clare and Limerick, whatever, you're almost like, okay, let's take out anyone who's got any sort of a niggle here. So again, you just can't believe in what you're seeing.
No, but I do think there's sort of a mentality. Maybe it's because of the older managers that they played at an era where nearly there was 2 or 3 weeks between a game, so you got to, and they sort of still have that mentality now, whereas actually the structure has changed where you're nearly playing every week, and they haven't adapted to that, and they still feel if you have a match on one side, you have a match on 2 separate Sundays, that we have to be on the training field 2 or 3 days a week beforehand. Like, and do you really maybe you need to do one session, and maybe another session would be indoors, maybe a tactics session, and keeping lads fresh. Like, and I do wonder are all these injuries being players overtrained? Like, are too many of these guys doing too much running around and not much rest and recovery? Like, I do wonder, particularly Pádraig Joyce. Like if I was in Galway, I'd be run up and down like all this talent, but they always seem to be injured. Why are they always injured? Like, are they being overtrained? I spoke to a manager. I was in company of a club manager in Galway, football manager last year, and this guy was still in the club championship, and he got injured training with Galway. This was October, away outside. Like, I'm not sure whether it was a collective session with Galway or whether he was already in a gym session, but this guy got injured while his club were still in the championship.
Yeah,
like, that's not good enough. Like that's not. If players are tired then in March, like why are you bringing them back so early? Like, just like I think there's got to be like, and like Conor Moore coming out and saying, why we gone by played 13 times in 30 days? Yeah, but you have the power as meet manager not to play him, maybe to ease his burden as well. Like, so assuming he is a college player, like, so you have the power maybe to watch his load too, like.
Yeah, like you make a good point there about like, could it be more tactical sessions and whatever, which is totally true if the bodies are anyway.
Yeah.
The only trouble is, like, let's say for example, just going back to the trouble that I felt Tipperary had in terms of how to set up and face a puck out. That kind of needs to be repped on the pitch. And if it's the first time you've thrown together a forward line, you know, and that is the first time that we've seen that collection of forwards together at the one time, it does need to be repped, because when there's a crowd there, and I know the crowd was muted because the player served up to them wasn't great, it's very hard to hear each other even 20 or 30 yards away. Now, and that's where it needs to be repped, so lads know what to do. A bit like, you know, you're a Liverpool supporter. You know, like, you can see watching Liverpool, they all know the trigger of when to go, when to press, and stuff like that. And that's also the case in hurling. People might say, don't bring in that soccer talk. Well, that's fair enough. Watch your team lose because they didn't know how to press over and back on puckouts. And that's where Tipperary or any other team, like with Galway, those key lads who keep getting injured, Damien Comer, Shane Walsh, and Sean Kelly, I don't think is as old as them, such a key man. But like, some of those lads are on the road for 10 years and maybe they need the Shane O'Donnell treatment, whereby totally forget about the league.
Absolutely, yeah. And I know the good managers are the ones that treat players differently. You can't throw them all in the same box. It was like when O'Shea and Liam Sheedy came into Tip, and they suddenly realised that we've got to train Lara Corbett differently than the rest of them, because Lara's body just can't cope with doing laps and doing. And look what happened. We got to see the very best of Lara, and Lara was rarely injured. Like, so, like, I think you have to be every player has to be monitored, and they have to be monitored separately. And look, we've seen. Look, I suppose the comment there, Garrod O'Connor, we could be seeing the drawback of Garrod maybe having too much hurling in February, and now he looks spent. But now, look, he has 5 weeks to freshen up. Like, he hasn't been overly played in the last few weeks. Like, maybe that, I did think people were wondering why was Garrod playing so much, but then I was saying you go with the hot hand when he's there. Like, he was flying it. Maybe he enjoyed it. Like, so, and maybe he's one of those players that. And like, we're all human. Maybe he's one of those players, the more he plays, the better he gets. Maybe he prefers not playing matches, if you know what I mean. Like, so I just come back to the league formats. Like if just say the split season still finishes on the end of July, so you have to stay within the 7-month parameter. Like, if the All-Ireland Football Championship or provincials are starting on the 8th of April, you'd have to think minimum Patrick's weekend should be the finish for the Football League. And everybody gets 3 weeks. Like, you look, and I think Westmeath and Down play this Sunday. Westmeath play this Sunday, and they have to play Leinster Championship the following weekend. Like, we know Mayo had the same issue last year. Like, you're being penalised for getting to a league final. The hurling championship doesn't start till the third weekend of
April.
So, like, just should next weekend, the 31st of March, that weekend should be the cutoff. Like, that, if you want to make the league, just say if you want to make the league separate and still give it a meaning, I think you have to have at least a 3-week, minimum 2, but I'd say 3 is what the manager will look between the end of the league and start of the championship. If you don't, I think you have to create an element within the league that plays into the championship. I know Derek Lynch in Clare posed a few suggestions there. Do you give a league point to a team that wins the league? Like, not a bad idea, but I think then you turn the league into another championship, because if you thought there was something that would help you in the championship, wouldn't you be putting out your strongest team nearly every day in the league?
Probably. At least we can believe what we're seeing in the league.
That's it. And that wouldn't be too bad, but would that be better in the long run? I'm not so sure. Like, I think you still want the league to experiment a small bit. Like, you don't, you want to be able to use it where you can give lads game time, maybe blood some young lads without the result being the be all and end all.
So we kind of did what we think will be the summer 15 not too long ago, and we won't go ahead and pick from scratch again, but I'm just wondering how different is this? Would you kind of change your mind in terms of this team? So just to read out what you had the last time we talked about Volume 2: Rhys Shelley, Breen, Ronan Maher, Morgan, O'Mara, Robert Byrne, Conor Bowe. This is what we think will be picked. Connors, Tynan, Stacklem, O'Connor, and Dan McCormack, Noel McGrath, Jason Ford, and Jake Morris. Do you think that's what it's going to remain?
I think the makeup will be somewhere around that. I'm still a fan of playing Noel McGrath at 6. I'm of the thinking, like, this is my belief. What do we have? What would I think Tip have to start playing to their strengths and maybe play their own game a small bit? Like, would there, like, just say if, take Noel out of it and they're not looking at him at 6. Who's your safest bet at 6 at this stage? I think if you're not going to go Brian O'Mara, you have to go with your experienced hand. I put Dan McCormack back there. You know what you're going to get from him. And then, but if I was thinking back to Boris Lee, if you went Noel back there, could you get Dan to perform the same sort of shepherd role that he had for Brendan in that great run to the All-Ireland, where if Brendan drifted, Dan sat? Like, there was a sort of symbiotic relationship.
But you were saying earlier that you can't give Limerick a +1 or whatever. So, you're going to need a 6 who can also defend.
Yeah. Like, it's just, it's one that it's look, I'd be surprised if Noel ends up back there. I do think maybe he's better. I think people say Noel at centre forward, but that middle third is so clogged. I'd nearly prefer him being further back the field where he could survey the field and at least maybe gets on a sharp puck out rather than being completely reliant on somebody trying to pick him out.
I just think we need to go down the Dublin Jim Gavin route and just have himself and Bonner as to come on and lead the team over the line if hopefully you've done well before. I don't know what the story is with Barry Heffernan. Is he carrying some sort of a knock? But he's an option for 3 or 6. We just need someone who's like, he's very mobile, he's strong, he's not going to get destroyed in the air. You could play him 3 and Ronan 6, or him 6 and Ronan 3. I just think we need to go with players that we know are solid straight down the middle. I know I've said before about Cadell at 6, but obviously that has never been tried, so it would be a bit extreme to try it at this stage. But these are the questions. And also, just get the puck outs right. Just get the puck outs right, and I think that will sort an awful lot.
Like, and I thought that the puck outs were pretty decent last year, like, so.
That's why I don't necessarily believe in what I'm seeing.
Yeah. Especially when Shelley, like, we saw the Limerick game, he was pretty good on them. Okay, people might throw the Offaly game out, but God, he was really pinging him that day. Like, he Galway, oh Jesus, like, I don't know, it's like he had no movement, or Galway set up completely spooked him because he struggled to even get the 50-60 yard puck outs away. Well, we know Shelley is brave enough to go for them, and but like, it's a risky strategy because if that's the way that they weren't showing their hand fully, and like, I don't think any team in the league has been showing their hand fully. Like, there's no but we don't have a lot of credit in the bank. Like, if things don't go well, like I said, Limerick have credit in the bank. Like, if Clare, things went badly for Clare last weekend, they had enough store in the bank, like, to come back, because they had probably done more of the last few years to say you could trust them coming back.
Adrian McGrath says, what about Maher at 6, then put Barrett, Breen, Morgan inside? McGrath at 6 versus Clare or Cork coming running? Like, you do need a centre back who can really cover that middle area and cover the ground. And like, look at
Declan Hannon's not quick.
Yeah, but look at the 6th position for David Fitzgerald's goal. Puck out, everyone was all over. He touches it down and runs straight up. So you need someone who knows centre back at this level. And fair enough, Ronan Maher isn't the paciest, but he's not going to leave the middle wide open like that, or he certainly shouldn't. Like, although maybe a couple of years ago against Clare, the entire half back line was pulled out to the other half of the field, and we were destroyed that way.
Like, that was a matchup that Clare obviously picked on, that they saw Robert Byrne at 6 to put David Reedy out of him, and just Reedy went everywhere and anywhere. Probably Byrne in that play probably bought it. Reedy probably took off and Byrne followed him, big hole left up in the middle. Like that's probably where the inexperience kind of Byrne had to let him off and trust that somebody was going to pick him up, that he needed to stay where he was just in case something came through the middle, and that's what happened.
Yeah, and the Byrne was dragged into corner back at times trying to compete with Reedy for ball, and that all told me that further up the field, Tipperary are not winning ball. They're not getting onto the breaks on the puck out. Like if you go back and watch all the puck outs, watch how often Clare are swarming in and Tipperary players are standing around. And if you keep winning all the rucks, that means you're going to be on the front foot, and Clare are great with the ball, and they pin lovely ball in. None of the backs have any chance, so they're all going to look ragged.
Then all of Clare's long puck outs, there were the 70-yard, 80-yard, they were into space, like they were drilled low, and there was lads running out onto them, whereas sometimes the tip puck outs when they go along are too floaty for me. They're too advantageous to the defender maybe to break them down or come in and get them. Like so, we've definitely got to clean up that in terms of if we are going along with a puck out, it's got to be nearly drilled. Like that if the first person to the ball will be the forward, and it's up to him to make sure his first touch is right to get it. Like that give him the best chance to win at first. If he doesn't, like it's like anything breaking ball, it's up for grabs then.
Yeah, and look, we're both patient enough about this. We think in general things are moving the right direction. But if puck outs is what cost Tipperary, a big controllable, there's going to be 40 facing you. You're going to have 40 of your own. If Tipperary lose the game on puck outs alone, or lose games on puck outs alone, that's when there's real questions to answer. But the Tipperary footballers then, they came up short against Leitrim. At least the under-20s got a win over Clare and Munster round 2.
Yeah, mixed fortunes last weekend. I suppose we start with the good stuff. I suppose great win going down to West Clare on Saturday and beating Clare. So like they're in a good spot now to maybe make the second phase. Like they have they play Waterford next Saturday in Limerick, 2:00 the last round of the first phase. So although that's not a gimme either. Like Waterford have lost their 2 games, but they've lost both of them narrowly. So it looks like there's a good competitive under-20 team in Waterford this year. And there's whatever it is about Waterford football, they have absolutely no fear of Tipperary. It doesn't matter how good or how bad Tip are going, they'll always lift their game. So like if Tip cannot take this game for granted at all, but like it's a minimum like Tip getting into the second phase and getting a crack at Cork and Kerry. Like that's it's all about development. Like we're not expecting Munster titles or anything. Like it's the more games these guys get, the better. And I suppose seeing the likes of maybe Oren Jones scoring 1-4 last weekend, 1-3 from play, like having maybe an exciting young talent maybe potentially coming through in the next couple of years is good. And then you go back to the senior footballers, lost 15-9 to Leitrim on Sunday. Look, it was a dead rubber for Tip. They had nothing really at stake. Competitive in the first half, like was it 9-6-5 or 7-6 at half time. But I suppose Leitrim probably they were going for promotion. They definitely lifted the pace in the second half and pulled away to win. And Tip were down Sean O'Connor, and I think there's concerns that he might be out for the Waterford game, whatever bit of a knock he's after taking. So you think Tip's best forward is going to be missing. And we were at the Munster launch last week, and Stephen O'Brien is touch and go to be ready for Waterford. So you have to think that that's a banana skin. If you offered me a 1-point win now on Sunday week, I'd take it, because look, Conor Sweeney's still not back here. We're just so short of experience and quality at the moment. It's I wouldn't say it's worrying times, but like it's hard to know if we've bottomed out yet before. And like Paul Kelly, in fairness, he wasn't too despondent last weekend. He sort of took the game for what it was. It's about he giving lads game time, getting more minutes back into Mark Russell again. And I suppose no different to Liam Cahill. We're not sure what the best 15 for Tip is. Like that's because probably of injuries and stuff, and we probably won't know until next year. I think this championship, we're probably going to end up in the Tailteann Cup. It could be another difficult championship. I won't put it like it has the potential. Maybe we'll turn it. Maybe we'll have something better. We might get a few wins in the Tailteann, but I suppose we have to give Paul Kelly and his management a full year to assess. They're assessing players at the moment. They probably need a club championship just to go out and have a look at other players to see can they run. Like they've gone through an awful lot of players in the league. There's guys like Sir Peter McGarry and Jack Leamy who were let go from the Tip extended panel, were brought in. Like even though they didn't even get the pre-season. Like and just Mike Lowry of Arravale sort of came in late and like just. It seems to me like they're still doing a lot of trialing at the moment, and I'd say that trialing could continue throughout a lot of this year, and maybe it'll be next year before we see a settled team in place.
Yeah, and the Tip minor footballers, they're out against Limerick on Tuesday evening, and very striking that of the panel from last year, there's only 5 survivors.
Yeah,
so it really is a huge changeover for Shane Hennessy and Mike Brown.
Yeah, so obviously last year's group were probably a lot of them were up to the age. So, but there's just I'm speaking to a few people. Like there's a good group of players there that have probably come together since under 15, under 16. I suppose there's a real, I would say, stability with the underage development squads coming the last few years. Maybe we'll see the fruits of that coming through. Where like previously there's development squads, and then a lad might got called in with the hurlers, and then that squad sort of wasn't the same. Whereas there's been a strong core maybe the last couple of years of 14s, 15s, where a lot of them are sticking together. They're not, maybe a couple maybe end up moving on to the hurlers was to develop or something like that. But I think there's definitely a stronger core of lads that maybe commit to football at 14, 15 they're still there at come 17.
And then to move on to the Camogie team, after losing to Waterford in the first round, it's been some turnaround to beat Galway, Cork, and now Kilkenny. Like that's a really strong form. It was 212 to 160 the other day. So that's pretty good against Kilkenny.
Absolutely, yeah. To go down to Kilkenny and give them a nice beat now is always welcome. Yeah, like I think I was a bit pessimistic after the loss to Waterford. I said, God, it's going to be a bit of a struggle, and they were missing we're missing Julianne Burke, we're missing Grace O'Brien, missing Karen Kennedy, missing a lot of players, and you said this could be tricky, but God, they've really picked things up. 3 wins in a row, and now they're one win away from getting to a league final, which would be massive for this team, like a national final. Think about it, back in 2020 they got to the league final, but it was never played because of COVID, and I thought that was a massive missed opportunity in terms of development to play in a big game in Croke Park, national exposure, just for the girls to get that bit of experience. And look, they've got to go to, I don't think there's been a venue for the Clare game determined yet for next Saturday, but they've got to go there. They'll be expected to win. Clare have had a tough league, but Jesus, like there's one, Clare will definitely be. It's all about Clare looking ahead to championship now, and they'll probably feel this is a very, very good game for us to maybe gel a bit better together. So like Tip cannot go down there thinking that Clare will roll over. They've got to go down there, be professional, get the result, and get into that final against either Galway or Cork. Was like it just. I think Tip have definitely taken steps on. That under Dennis Kelly, like they've got to an All-Ireland semi last year. Okay, lost to Waterford, and look, this is a good Waterford team that have the best player in the country in Beck Hart, and I think they underperformed against Cork in the All-Ireland final. I don't think that was a true reflection of Waterford. They've had a good league. Like they were only beaten a point by Galway last weekend in Loughrea. They've beaten Tipperary, they've beaten Clare. I think they've lost to Cork, like so. Like they're Waterford are bona fide top 5, like top 5 county. So those probably defeats the Waterford in last year, and in the league they're not while they're disappointing results. Probably they're not as poor results as we thought maybe initially at the time. This Waterford team are here for real.
Yeah, and then the minors are going well. Also 3 wins from 3 beats, and from 214 to 9 points. So.
They're into an All-Ireland semi-final. They've 2 matches left to play, but like they're motoring well. I think it's what they have to play Cork and Waterford, I think. But like if they win one of those, they'll finish top of the group and on paper get an easier semi-final. But I suppose that's the danger of this round robin. Like it's about getting in the top 4, but you can end up playing a semi-final against a Cork or Kilkenny or a Galway. I think that's the way it's looking like. So you're probably going to have to beat a team you've beaten already, or maybe 2 to win an All-Ireland. But I suppose taking the results out of it, it's a Tip team that's performing well. Even if they don't win an All-Ireland, it does look like there's an awful lot of good talent coming through. Like it's like anything, an All-Ireland semi or final comes down to on the day, and maybe some days just I can perform, but it doesn't mean it's a true reflection of a group of players.
And then to the ladies' football, so it was round 7 of Division 2, and both Tipperary and Donegal came into the game knowing that promotion wasn't there for either of them, relegation wasn't a concern. So it just seemed to be a bit of a free hit. Tip lost by a point, 3-4 to 2-8.
Yeah, Tip in their league trip, they won 3 and lost 4 of their league games. All 4 losses were a point. So they were very, very close, maybe from being in the league final, maybe being promoted. If they turn 2 of those results around, they're probably in a final and being promoted. Like, so they've been competitive. Again, scoring is their Achilles heel. They only scored 7 times, 3-4. Like, that's. I suppose Aisling Maloney does seem to be getting she does seem to be getting tied down an awful lot. Like she's not putting up big totals anymore. So it seems like she's getting double and sometimes treble marked, and it's definitely negating Tip somewhat. Like other players stepped in and got scores last weekend, but I suppose if Aisling is not maybe getting 5, 6, 7 scores a game, Tip are probably not going to. I'm not saying not going to that they won't win, but it's hard that they control a game pretty well.
Okay. Look, anything else you want to touch on before we finish up?
I don't think so. Yeah, it'll be just quite enough weekend coming. Not too many Tip teams in action. Sort of a mini breather before the summer. I suppose National Football League finals. I think Derry and Donegal will be good. Derry and Dublin, because like neither team are out in Ulster for 3 weeks. So I think they can really go at this. Like so.
Yeah, I think Armagh against Donegal will also be very tasty.
Yeah, and I just hopefully, look, I suppose the weather settles down and we get a couple of good games. Like it's like anything, like how as good as Dublin were last weekend, how tuned in were Tyrone, like how like it's just that's the one thing with the league. And you said it too. You just can't trust you don't know what game are they targeting. Like, and it's probably unfair in supporters too, because we're all Tip will go hard to win next against Clare because they need to get to a league final. But then you don't know back in the team Cahill really want to get to a league final, or is he putting the players under pressure? Maybe they're completely different mindset. Like, so you just don't know. You just don't know what's going on with inside a group of players and where their focus is.
Yeah, for sure. And look, if you're hungry for more GAA coverage, go and get a copy of the Nenagh Guardian, which is available now. Thanks very much, Shane. We'll chat to you again next week.
Good luck.